I'm gonna raise my voice for Jose, because it is what he deserves. When Jose is playing, I am rooting just for him. We want to see him play and win, and that is why we sing, we love you, Jose De Sousa. Jose De Sousa. For your title on the Euro Tour. We love you, Jose De Sousa. Jose De Sousa. For your miscounts on the Euro Tour.
Hello and welcome to a new episode of the Weekly Dartscast. Alex Moss here. Shout out to PG for that intro. We'll be talking more about the special one a little bit later on, but let's first introduce our special guest co-host for this week's show. It is, of course, our producer, Hanna. Thank you very much for joining us, Hanna. How are you doing?
Good to be back on this side of the computer, as well as the other side of the computer. Just good in general. My team beat Burton's team. We won't even pretend like anything happened in the NFL last week. Doesn't matter. My team beat Burton's team. That's all we need. And there's been a lot of quality darts on, so that's helping get us through those weekends.
Definitely has, and my usual partner Burton DeWitt not available due to other commitments, but we are going to hear from him in a moment. He's going to have a chat with Glen Durrant, which he spoke to him last night, and me and you will be chatting about a busy week of darts, busy weekend of darts, lots to get through. But first, let's hear from the newly crowned Premier League champion, Glen Durrant.
I'm joined today by the most recent Premier League champion, Glen Durrant. Glen, how are you?
Yeah, good evening, Burton. It's always an honour to join your show.
Glad to have you on. It's been almost a week now since you beat Gary Anderson and Nathan Aspinall to win the Premier League in Coventry. How does it feel now to be a PDC major winner, to hear Glen Durrant Premier League champion?
Probably not as I expected. I felt rotten the past few days. I think just the incredible highs and then being on a flight sort of, 6 hours later to, 2 flights to Germany, coming home. 1 day at home, back down for another COVID test at Coventry today into another hotel. So not how I dreamt, but don't you think that pretty much sums up 2020 anyway? So I'll get time to see, my family. My parents are in their 80s now, but they're so incredibly proud and unbelievable dart fans right now. It's fantastic, and I'll definitely enjoy the moment when the timing's right. But I've still got some work to do back in Germany, and that's where my focus is for the next few days.
Of course, and we hope you feeling better soon. Now, we had you on the show just before the Premier League restarted a few months ago after a 5-month break in the season. How did you find resuming the Premier League behind closed doors and that block of, 10 games in 12 nights?
Yeah, I think one of my big strengths is the fact that, there's two things I would say to that. Number one is, I played in BDO finals in front of 27 people for the World Darts Trophy, about 10 people when we played in South Wales somewhere, 50 people when I played Adam Smith-Neil at the World Masters. And, I've played in front of that crowd where I think in the BDO I learned to focus just me on that dartboard, just me and the board, just pretend that you're back at home in your dart room practicing. And I think I've taken sort of that into the PDC. I mean, playing in front of Liverpool and Dublin and Aberdeen, it was just something that will live forever. And I was top of the league when the crowd finished. When we stopped playing with Liverpool, I was top of the league there. So it's not necessarily the case that I've won the Premier League because it's behind closed doors, but I think it has a big part of it. I think the promotion of it was brilliant. The fake noise, the wonderful things that Sky do, and I just pretended there was 15,000 people behind me, and it didn't diminish the moment for me.
Of course, and you mentioned you were top at the break. You were, after the break, top for all but 1 day. When did finishing top the tables, did you start thinking that was a possibility, and what did it mean to you considering only Phil Taylor and Michael Van Guren had managed it before?
Yeah, I remember beating Darryl Gurney maybe 7-1. I'd had a horrendous practice backstage, and come out and couldn't buy a double. I could hear Wayne Mardle whenever I wanted 113, 114, 106, and this is what does it. I usually finish these, and my finishing round about that period when I played Darrell Gurney was exceptional. But then 10, 11, 12 nights on the spin started taking its toll on me, my body, and because I put so much effort into every dart, and then I started beginning to think of, I can get top 4 here, and then ultimately I can get that 25 grand bonus as well, and join the real greats who have done that. So it then become a real slog, and the fight back to Peter Wright, the fight back to Gary Anderson, etc., etc. So no one was going to take that away from me, and I was extremely proud to finish top.
Of course, finish top. The plan, though, was that the finals would take place at the O2, but as you mentioned already, they got moved to Coventry behind closed doors. What was your reaction like when you were told that the finals wouldn't be played in front of a crowd?
Yeah, one of disappointment, because it's not often in your life you're going to get the chance to play in the Premier League, and I wanted that whole experience of lifting that title in front of 12, 14,000 people at the O2. And I remember when Dibby won the World Match Play, and I thought it was quite sad to watch him lift the trophy up to, Barry Hearn didn't give him it, the sponsors didn't give him it, due to restrictions, they had to go and collect it off the drinks table. It was quite sad. So, my first reactions was one of disappointment that we weren't going to play in front of a crowd. But quite quickly, I got myself into the zone where, this is your opportunity. That semi-final game, hopefully we'll have to talk about that in a second, because I'd love to tell you exactly how I felt in that game. But, what a disappointment, but quickly focused on the fact that we were going to be behind closed doors.
Well, you're absolutely right. We are going to talk about that semi-final. Don't think you'll disagree with me saying it wasn't necessarily the greatest match I ever played, but fought back from 9-7 down to beat Gary Anderson 10-9, surviving a few match darts. What was it like trying to, during that second break during that match, trying to regroup and get yourself up and then to come back?
Yeah, I haven't spoke about this yet, but it was awful. It was horrendous. It was embarrassing. It was disappointing. And I think the best word I've used so far is I think I got stage fright. And people laugh when you win the Lakeside, and I read them all, what people wrote, but it's an incredible atmosphere, finals night, finals day at Lakeside. I mean, it's just one I've never, ever experienced, and probably never will do. It's immense. And I never bottled it there. But against Gary Anderson, I was thinking, right, you win this game, you're in the Grand Slam. You win this game, you're in the Premier League next year. Potential World Series. That monkey off my back of being a Premier League major winner. And all them things motivate me. I wanted to think like that because they were the target setting I did for myself. You win this and, you're talking 300, 400,000 pounds in over 5 years or something. The type of add-ons, your price, your exhibitions go up, etc. Your whole reputation. People who've never seen me throw a dart watch the Premier League only, and I got on that stage, Burton, and from my knees to my ankles, I couldn't feel them. I was like walking in mud. And the only thing I would say is, part of me was wishing Gary would start going 140, 180, and maybe I would have responded and kicked in then. But I was just fighting with myself that how on earth can I be 6'4" up at 1.63 up, averaging mid-80s? When's Gary going to kick in? And all the things I've learned, all the things I've trained for, it was just turning, the whole experience was turning out to be a real disaster. And I got interviewed by Sky afterwards, and people have mentioned to me that that you're in the final of the Premier League, yet you look distraught, and I was for about 5 minutes. But I guess that's the beauty of having your manager around you. My wife was there, and them two sort of rallied me round, and I'll tell you exactly how I felt in the final when you ask.
Well, I guess then I'll ask. Close final, at least most of the way through, 13 consecutive holds of throw to start, but then you punished, took the lead, threw for the match in the 19th leg. How are you feeling during the final, especially with the darts in your hand in the 19th leg?
wonderful, fantastic, exhilarated, walking on cloud nine. It was just, I was like a different man. And I'm talking from leg one. When I was thrown at the 19th leg, you're thinking, this is all you've ever dreamt of. I tell you what I thought of when I played for England in the WDF World Cup, where you play one leg. And I remember playing Larry Butler or someone like that at like 7 each, 8 each against America. And it was just that, for some bizarre reason, when I stepped up for the 19th leg, and I think I hit a 180 to open up. But that's where my mind was there. I was back in Canada, Newfoundland, playing for England, thinking, I cannot believe I'm wearing the England shirt, throwing for a deciding leg. So that's where I was at that stage. But felt like a totally different man on that stage. And I was surprised with the average. I've played a lot worse than average, 96, 97. So to hear I averaged 92, that's not the way I felt. But I guess in that scenario, what we're playing for and what we're playing in, just getting over the line was a big thing, but felt tremendous.
Now, you mentioned in your interview with Sky after the match that, you were off to, I believe it would have been Germany the following morning for Euro Tour. But did you get able to get any celebrations in before you went to bed that night?
I didn't sleep the night before, and I was fighting with myself. My wife was sound asleep, and I was just fighting with myself, thinking, "Come on, you need an hour's sleep. We need 2 hours sleep." And I barely had 15 minutes sleep the whole night. So I felt pretty tired next morning. Couldn't sleep after breakfast. In the afternoon when you're laying there thinking, I might be dozed for half an hour. So it was a pretty surreal time, and yet within an hour of hitting that winning double against Nathan, even though I only had 3 hours to sleep, I slept the full 3 hours. I woke up at 3:05, and I was getting picked up by Mac at 3:30. So no time to celebrate. And like I said, I just think that sums up 2020 anyway. So there'll be a time. I've got my 50th birthday next month, and subject to any restrictions, I would just love to have a family meal, and maybe, just maybe then, it will hit me exactly what I've done.
Hopefully it'll be a nice birthday parmo to celebrate. Important weekend, though, that followed. You mentioned you only got 3 hours sleep before your flight, but went to Germany and needed a big weekend to qualify for the European Championship. How did you find the challenge of putting the Premier League win to one side to focus on getting that victory on Saturday?
Yeah, my mindset is I need to win one game, because as a seed, you win, you get $3,000. That takes me from 28th place where I was sat up to about 14 or 15. My mindset was all wrong. I was waxing lyrical about Jose De Sousa. It was really giving me a hard time on the practice board, and I was more of a cheerleader for him rather than me focusing on my game against Mike. And even as bad as I was playing, I was still 3-1 up and missed 6 starts at tops and tens, which has haunted me all my life now, double 10. I really should have got to that game, and the minimum I should have got, in my opinion, was to play right in the quarterfinal, and that's in my opinion, a 50-50 game. So it was tough. I loved getting home on Monday. I loved it. I loved getting. I did a little bit at Teesside Airport, and I've said no to an awful lot to ITV, BBC, local news, and I've barely done any interviews because I just wanted to spend some time with my wife. But I've just felt dog rotten. I felt terrible. We tried to get some fresh air yesterday in Whitby, but I didn't want to spoil it for her. But I'm just not feeling it right now. I'm feeling absolutely terrible. If I was ranked in the Pro Tour as 7 or 8, I wouldn't be here this weekend. But I've lost about $14,000 from Dublin Pro Tour last year and a bit of Euro Tour, and it's so important to be in that top 16 as in the Pro Tour rankings, because it opens so many doors in the Euros for next year. So I've got 48 hours, 72 hours to rally around, and that's the only reason I'm here. Pending another COVID test, which I've done this morning, so I'm just waiting on the results of that. And then it's a 6 o'clock flight in the morning, getting picked up at 3:30. I guess that's the bit that people don't see. It's been a real roller coaster week since the Premier League, that's for sure.
I'll let you get some rest, but one last question. Where does this rank winning the Premier League in your mind in your career?
Imagine a 100-metre sprint. In the fourth places, in third and fourth would be 60 metres down the track would be the second and third Lakesides. Fifth would be representing England. That was the big one. So they're the 5 biggest moments I had. Playing for England was even bigger than winning the World Masters, and the World Masters was my first big trophy. After 95 metres and dipping for the line would be beating Danny Noppert for my first Lakeside, because I've just never, ever felt I was still a relative player, county player, when I beat Danny Noppert. And that's the way I sort of saw myself anyway. And coming late with a big Colin Jackson dip there is the Premier League, winning that. So for sure, I can tell everybody that the best moment I've ever had in darts is lifting that trophy for the Premier League.
Well, Glenn, congratulations on lifting that trophy. Hopefully next time it'll be in front of a crowd, and thank you for joining us.
Anytime. Thanks, Burton.
Thanks to Glenn for joining us. Now let's get into some chat on the PDC Women's Series took place over the weekend, and Lisa Ashton and Deta Hedman taking the 2 World Championship spots. Has this past weekend put Deta back in the conversation for the current best ladies players in the game? What do you reckon?
I think she did an amazing job. She really brought her A game. Current best ladies player in the game. It's one of those things that it's hard with how little they've been allowed to play, especially with COVID. There hasn't been a lot with the BDO going down and everything. There hasn't been a lot of gameplay where people have had a chance to get out. Like Laura Turner was saying, she played a few of the online games, but it still didn't feel like she'd been out to play any games in 7 months. So it's hard to judge everybody's form off the bat. Do I personally think that Deta is one of the best players, women's players of the game ever? 100%. Do I adore Deta Hedman beyond all measure? 100%. Do I think that it's amazing and going to be super amazing to have her back in the World Championship, not with the BDO, but with PDC in the first year that she can't be in the Women's BDO Championship? She's going to be in the PDC one. Just, love it. There was some moments that were a bit shaky, but it's one of those things that there were moments that were a bit shaky for everyone. So there's definitely an argument to be made there that she is still one of the best current players in the ladies game. I think what we saw earlier in the year with the BDO maybe was just super unfortunate, because obviously she went out fairly early on in the women's worlds, and, you know, by all accounts, including her own, just a game that went super poorly. It was fantastic to see her doing so well. It was astonishing compared to how the rest of the games went, how she kept the form, and part of me thinks that that's just, as we see with Lisa as well, it's just that years of experience, not only with the throwing of darts and not only with having that skill, but also she had talked about with me previously about events that go on for all day. And when you have a full dart schedule during the weekend where you don't have one event, but you have 2 events crammed in, that's a very, very long day, especially if you make it deep into the run. So to give herself the stamina to make it that far in all of those, she's certainly calling on a lot of experience with that several of the women's players just haven't been able to have. So is she one of the current best in the game? You definitely could say she is, because when you put it down to it, given the current climate with COVID and everything, this might be what women's darts has to look like in future. Events crammed into a weekend, events crammed into a couple of days to be able to get them through. And it's going to take that stamina. And so help me, I hope at 60 I can stay awake that long, because I am struggling at 36 to do so now.
Definitely, yeah. You make a great point there about the 2 events in the one day, and the lack of opportunities that these ladies have had over the last 6-7 months due to the virus. Going into the weekend, I think it's a fair assessment. You'd say that Lisa Ashton and Fallon Sherrick, they were the 2 red hot favourites to get those 2 top spots. Unfortunately, the reigning world champion Mikuru Suzuki not being able to travel over to play in the tournament, which we're all gutted not to see her get involved. But you'd have put Lisa and Fallon as the top two. Lisa, a tour card holder at the minute. She's played the Summer Series, the Autumn Series. She's had those playing opportunities. And Fallon, with the Modus Online stuff, we've seen her play the World Series finals. So she's had a lot more opportunities than the other players. Even going into that Friday, we had the Grand Slam qualifier that kicked things off. Lisa was in majestic form. She only dropped 6 legs in her 6 games to get that spot in the Grand Slam, to be in it for a second year in a row. But full credit to Deta Hedman. She deserves a lot of credit for what she was able to do over the weekend. And it was a pretty tight race going into that final day. And we're trying to work out, while I was following on our timeline, really, who was going to get the spot if Deta and Fallon finished on the same amount of prize money, which is what happened in the end. But it went down to legs won, and Deta just winning more legs than Fallon to keep hold of that second spot. But it was a really, really interesting weekend. Deta, going into the weekend, would I put her in that bracket of the best ladies players at the moment? Probably not. But given what she was able to do over the weekend, I think it puts her firmly back in there. She's had the last couple of years gone out first round of the BDO Women's World Championship. Wasn't coming into this in her best form, but we've seen over those 2 days that she still has got that game to match it with the best of them, and she's got that spot. And I'm just hoping now that when we get round to the World Championship in a couple of months' time, that we're going to see a crowd of some sort, so she does get that reception, because I think she was deserving of having that spot in the World Championship. She's even more deserving of getting that reception from the fans as well. So fingers crossed we'll see that.
Absolutely. And obviously with the games being streamed, there was a lot of eyes on the women's game. What were your thoughts overall for how that first women's series event went?
Yeah, I think it went well. And I said when the Women's Series first got announced a little while ago now, I put something up on our website saying that this is a great opportunity for the PDC to stream these events, because at the time there wasn't any other events from the PDC that weekend. And as it turned out, we did have a European Tour event which went against it. But kudos to the PDC. They doubled their efforts at the weekend. They streamed the European Tour events like they usually do, but they also put some effort into putting on the Women's Series and having a stream for that, which I thought was really good. And we just got to look at the numbers as well. I think they streamed a few games on YouTube. They did some daily highlights as well, and they're racking up tens of thousands of views. So that does show you that there is an audience there for the ladies' game. And I think there was 82 players in the end that played some part in the weekend. We could tell there was a difference in the standard overall. I think it was around the 63, 64 if you put all the ladies together. When you compare that to the Development Tour, it's around the mid-70s, Challenge Tour, the low 80s. So that there is a gap there, but I think it was a great opportunity for the ladies to put themselves in the shop window, if you like, for darts fans, get themselves back out there, because, as we say, it's been a long time since we've seen ladies-only competitions, and I think they made the most of it. There were some quality games over the weekend. For a lot of it, we saw the top players, the household names, get through to the last stages and win these events, which is good for the casual viewer that will tune in and watch it. And as we know, that the BDO's no longer, the WDF, their plans at the minute are on hold because of the virus, and we're not able to put on these events each weekend. But the PDC, we'll come on to it in one of our questions a little bit later on that we've had from our listeners, but hopefully we're going to see more of this in 2021, whether that's going to be more weekends, more than just the one weekend, or we're going to see maybe 4, 5 or 6 weekends. I'm not quite sure, but I think what we saw at the weekend, there's definitely an appetite to see more of it next year.
Yeah, and one of the things that I really liked about it is the effort that was put into it. Not only the having the bubble, but the fact that they did take the time to put this on and run commentary. There was, I think, an innate fear that there was going to be an event and they were going to run it on Dart Connect. And while Dart Connect is fantastic, it certainly doesn't reach anybody's eyes in particular. So the fact that they decided to stream it, whereas ideally it would be like the Pro Tour so we could get as much streaming as possible, but the fact that they decided to stream it, that they had commentary team with Colin Lloyd and Chris Murphy, and that you had your scorers, including our own Hugh Ware. I call him our own because, God, I love Hugh Ware. Just gave it that air of a PDC Pro Tour event. And having that not only brings that level of people that watch those events, that kind of air of expectation of this is what we expect to see, but also puts it in front of everybody's eyes. And I think it also gives people an interest to go to Dart Connect and see what else is going on. And you get a lot of potential for some big stories. And I think that's one of the things that people love to hear in commentary where you've got the big stories. Everybody has the kind of enjoys the story about MVG pulling up his socks. Does it really fix his game, or is it just like a mental tick? Things like that with the men's game. But then you have the potential, especially in the women's game. You know, you have Fallon playing her sister. You have Lisa Ashton absolutely smashing her daughter Lindsay on the hockey. And it's things like that where the women's game has potential to grow, but because it hasn't grown yet, it becomes a lot of what people have heard, what people have learned. Deta Hedman, of course, her brother played darts as well. So people learning from family members, people going in, you know, Laura Turner's got 2 young daughters who both play darts for Surrey. So you have this kind of family element that's still in there, because it almost feels like women's darts, even though it's been around for a long time, still has its interest growing from the people within the game. And this is a chance to grow it from people with outside the game, where darts is taking off in general everywhere, which we'll hear more on that later, that we've got some interviews from around the world. And as darts grows around the world, the important message that darts is something that is open and accessible to women. Darts is something that women can learn how to play, can be seen playing, can make money playing, would all be fantastic for darts as a whole, because the interest is there. To say that darts, even men's darts, is watched only by men is to completely shut out everything we've ever seen of any darts crowd on TV ever. That's not just men there. So I think it went extremely well. I have begged on Twitter for Matthew and the rest of the PDC to put on more. We'll see how it goes, but it went really well, and I couldn't be more pleased with the fact that they chose to operate it the way they did.
Well, we'll come back to our chat on ladies' darts a little bit later on. We've got some listener questions to go through, but first let's hear from our next guest on this week's show, and it is with the Challenge Tour runner-up this year, Ritchie Edhouse. I'm delighted to say I'm joined by the runner-up on this year's Challenge Tour, Ritchie Edhouse. Thanks for joining us, Ritchie. How are you doing?
Yeah, good, thanks. Yeah, come down to earth a little bit.
Well, congratulations on winning back your tour card this past weekend. What was the feeling like when the double went in and you won that semi-final in the last event, which secured you a top 2 finish in the Challenge Tour?
I've got to be honest, I didn't even know I had my tour card. When I lost the final, I thought I was 3rd or 4th. I wasn't looking at none of them. All I knew is if I won the final, I was top. I didn't know the money difference below that, if you know what I mean. So I'll come off with the ump. I lost the final. And then my manager was behind me. He was like, "You've got your tour card." I was like, "Really?" I was like, "Wow." So yeah.
So
it was strange.
Do you think that helped in a way then, that you thought that you needed to win the whole thing? So going into that semi-final, it didn't have any added pressure that was the game that would have got you the card?
It probably did, to be fair. Yeah, I was I say relaxed. That's not the right word, but yeah, I went into it with a different mindset. I think if I'd have known that I needed to win it just to get the tour card, I think there would have been obviously added pressure, and it might not have worked out like it did, to be fair.
And going into that final day on the Sunday, fair to say you were quite far back on the order of merit. How did you rate your chances of going deep in the last 2 events and winning that tour card?
After the first 4 events, I didn't think I had a chance at all, to be honest. I dropped down places. I was trying originally after the first day and a half just to try and get in the top 10, I think, is for the UK Open. I didn't think I had really a chance unless I won at least the first event. I had no chance at all, and I had a bit of luck in the first event, and then I started thinking about I could do it. And I was happy.
We'll come back to weekend in a moment, but it's obviously been a long break between weekends for the Challenge Tour. The first weekend was in late January. Was there a time when you thought maybe the Challenge Tour this year wouldn't return, given all the restrictions that we've got at the moment?
I really expected, yeah. I do. I mean, I knew that to get the Pro Tour out of the way and get it all done, but Challenge Tour, I didn't think it was coming back this year. We was all talking. I just said I expect to go back to Q School now, next year when it's on, and just write this year off as such. But thankfully it's come back on, and I was able to get it.
During the break though, you were involved in the Modus online leagues. Did you have much experience of playing darts online before that, and how did you find the whole experience of playing on the stream, and I'm assuming from your home as well?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't really play online at all, apart from like the soft chip side. That's not really online. But no, I enjoyed it. Yeah, I was playing in my house. It was a bit more relaxing. And to be fair, I got a new set of darts just before lockdown to give me a chance to like bed them in and such and get used to them and have the tweaks done to them. So as much as it's a nightmare, this lockdown, it done me a little favour.
And as it turned out as well, the two players to win tour cards on the Challenge Tour, yourself and Dave Evans, you were both well involved with the Modus League. So how much did it help having that to play in to keep playing competitively during the lockdown?
It helps a hell of a lot, to be honest. It, as you say, keeps your arm in, keeps you... Match practice is the main, I think, is the main goal for everyone. I think you can throw a dartball for hours and hours and hours, but that match practice to get the edge, it does work in the end, I think. So yeah, it really worked well for me. And I appreciate getting invited to it, to be honest. And it's done me. I mean, just don't know what's going to happen in the future now for this.
In terms of in-person darts, we've seen a few Opens take place over the last few months, but before the Challenge Tour, did you have a chance to play in any competitions in person or practice with other players? What was the preparation like heading into Barnsley?
I think, just before Barnsley, I played three tournaments, like face-to-face. But it was just a weird experience, wearing your masks. It's all new for everyone in it, and the social distancing side and things like that. But yeah, I think... say that it all helps, whether it was one tournament or three. It's that interaction of the two players on the hockey. You can't get past that. It's better than online. You just see someone throwing in front of you, which does get you that edge, I think.
I was going to say, what was it like that first day of the 3-day weekend of the Challenge Tour? 200 plus players, seeing some familiar faces that you've probably not seen since the last Challenge Tour in January. Was it a little surreal being back involved in the Challenge Tour after such a long break?
It was weird walking into the venue. I mean, it's a lovely venue, but walking into the venue, you see the officials, you see players that, apart from people on the Modus that I've spoke to, I've not seen no one at all for 4 months, 5 months, whatever it is, maybe more, obviously more than that. And it was good to catch up and chat, but walking in and seeing half of them, it was surreal. It was nice to be back. That's what I can say.
Just getting back to that final day, then some tight games that you had. I've got to mention the first event on the Sunday, last 16 against Chris Quantock. You were 4-0 down to win 5-4. I mean, when you come through a game like that, do you feel like something could happen?
I said to Chris afterwards, I didn't give up, but when I was 4-0 down and I was throwing everything at him, and he was throwing more, and I sort of, I say give up. My head was like, well, I'm throwing everything at him. He's got to go down a little bit. I've got to carry on, and I said I got through. I just said to him afterwards, sometimes if your name's on that trophy or whatever it be, you can't argue. It happens for you. There's a few games I could have easily lost and did a big double or they missed or whatever way around it was. It just sometimes the writing's on the wall, which thankfully it was.
Fast forward to the final then against Scott Taylor, and again 3-0 down, you come back and win in a decider. At that point, you're halfway to the target of getting to that top two, still one more event to go. How do you get yourself ready? Because I think your next game was only about half an hour later, the first game in the next event.
I was used to it from last year when I won an event against Scott once again, and as I come off to take a photo, I walked off and you got 5 minutes. You're talking first. You just run upstairs. Say thanks to everyone and go outside, chill out, and it just comes straight back on. You go, it's hard. It was every game. I think the most I had to wait was 10 minutes. I think it was just by the time you went upstairs and come back down, you're just back on again. So sometimes it helps because you don't have no time to think of what is next or what was. You just constantly plan when it gets to the later stages in them tournaments.
And in that final event, Keane Barry goes out early. He was holding that second spot, and you didn't know, but we knew that a final would get you into that top two. The last 16, 4-1 down to Martin O'Dowd, 1-2-7 finish to make it 4-all. You win the decider. What's going through your head at that point? You're getting so close to getting in that top two now.
I'm just thinking, as I say, he played really well. He just wouldn't miss the 57s, and I was trying my hardest, and things weren't going. Then it started to come. I got through, and I was like, as I say, once again, like against Chris, it was just if it's my time, it's going to happen because I'm getting through games where in the first 4 tournaments I weren't. And to be fair, even last year I was not getting through games like that. I was going 2-3 down, and probably last year my head was going down slightly at the beginning, and that's the worst time to do it. But I was comfortable with the darts. I was hitting things. It was just they was playing better than me. I just kept thinking, just drop your game, and I'm going to carry on. So yeah, it's just one of them. I was just getting nearer and nearer, and it's just I thought, oh, this could be it. It wasn't meant to be to get winning. But.
And you mentioned earlier about you lost that second final and you thought you didn't have your tour card and you found out that you did have your tour card, but obviously the one thing that you did miss out on for not winning that second event is return to Ali Pali. So was there some disappointment when you found that, or was it just the emotion of finding out that you got your tour card? That was just a side bonus as well if you'd have got that?
I think once I was, as I said, I walked off that game when I lost, very disappointed. I had to face like thunder, but it's because of the World Champs place that I missed out on, and I thought I missed out on the tour card as well, which would have been a double blow. But yeah, once I found out I got the tour card, it was a bittersweet, and I was happy about it. You know, as much as you can be happy of not getting in the Worlds, but hopefully there's other avenues I can get into the Worlds this year. I do well in the last few events.
Highly likely you won't have to wait until next year to be back on the Pro Tour. We've got the Winter Series coming up next month, and second on that Challenge Tour Order Merit should get you an invite. How good would it be to get those 5 events to play in before you get back on the tour full time next year?
Yeah, I mean, I'm in going to the European qualifiers as well this weekend, so with that coming up the next week, as I say, it could be another avenue to get to the World. You never know, and it'd just be nice to mix it before the fresh season with the big boys. I've missed it obviously about 10 months, but yeah, it'd be nice just to mix with them again, because obviously they're in the league, and if you get your confidence up beating them or lose, but yeah, it'd be good to get back to that Pro Tour. And
of course you had your tour card 2017, 2018, last year, your Challenge Tour performances, you ended up playing all the Players' Championship events. Will it be much of an adjustment being back on the tour? No, you haven't played on it this year yet, but having that tour card back again, is there going to be much of an adjustment, or do you think you'll be able to cope with that pretty easily?
I think I can cope better now than when I first got my tour card. I took it too easy. I just think we've got 2 years of this. I build the first year and then kick on, and it ain't like that. You've got to kick off from day one. So my mindset this year, well, next year should I say, will be just practice up to then, and then just try and kick on straight away and give myself a fighting chance. Keep my goal up.
Just lastly, want to touch on really the highlights that you've had in your career so far. Of course, we saw you play at Ali Pali last year. You got a win on that stage, a semi-final on the European Tour 2018. What would you pick out as your favourite achievement so far?
Well, obviously, I loved the Worlds. It was obviously a great experience. But I'd say it would be the European semi-final, because obviously I've never been to I call it a mini-majors semi-final, and beating the likes of Wade that day and Carl Anson and that, and some finishes and the way I was playing. I think that's got to be the highlight so far.
Fingers crossed we'll see you get through that qualifier this week and see you back on that European Tour stage this weekend, and congratulations again on winning back your tour card.
Thank you very much, mate. Appreciate it.
Thank you to Ritchie for joining us. Now let's get into some other darts which took place over the weekend in Germany, the European Tour continuing, and another new winner, Jose De Sousa, picking up the title. How big of a milestone could this be for the Portuguese number one?
It could be everything. As long as he follows up with it, where he continues practicing and continues, everything is achievable. I mean, he threw 105.79 in the final there. There's just everything. If you do that, you'll make it to the final more often than you won't. And last year, he had a decent run at the Gibraltar Darts Trophy. I remember that Dimitri Vandenberg and Kim Huybrechts were teasing him, calling him the superstar, as he left the building, because he was the only one out of the group of them that was still in the tournament, and shaking hands with everybody and just on top of the moon that it was going well. So I can just imagine the fact that he made the final. I think I even tweeted about it. When he made the final, there was no pressure for him, and it wasn't because that he didn't want to win. Of course you want to win. There's no pressure because he can't have expected, with MVG still being back in, to have even made it that far with some of the scores that were being thrown. So at that point in time, what is there but to enjoy the fact that you've made it this far and just go along and play your game and see where it takes you? And especially with Michael being in a bit of a pickle of late, yeah, I always would back him to still overcome anybody at any point in time, because we know what he's capable of. But it puts the pressure still firmly on Michael in that scenario. So how big of a milestone could winning one Euro Tour be? It could be huge. It really could. He could, if he follows on with this, he could win so many things, because you just need that first one to kind of start you off on, this is what I can do. I can beat MVG. I can beat these people. I can make it this far. And that'll do your confidence world good, and that'll push on over time. And like I said, it's not a flash in the pan situation. He was already starting to show signs of making progress. So if he can keep those darts flowing and can continue to adjust his mental arithmetic on some things, he could go forever, and long live the Portuguese man of scores.
Yeah, it did feel like a big moment for him, and just looking at the Players' Championship averages from this year, he's sixth on that list, around about 98 average, and his first 9 average close to 108. So we know that he can do it on the floor, and it's hard to believe really that you go back to January last year, he was then winning his tour card to get onto the main circuit. So he's still only into his second year on his tour card, and I guess it's kind of funny really as well, because we look back at last year and the class of 2019 from that Q school, and immediately we all bring up Glen Durrant, how well he did in his first year. But Jose De Sousa as well, getting to 3 finals, winning 2 titles, was very close to being that best player of that class. But Glen Durrant wins his Premier League title on the Thursday, and 3 days later it's Jose who's taking the shine off him a little bit, beating the world number 1 in that final. So it's kind of funny how these things work out. But I think really for Jose, the big thing was taking that floor game onto the stage, and we've seen glimpses of it. The World Match Play had Peter Wright in a lot of trouble. He was 8-6 up against him, ended up losing 10-8 in that first round, and he's had a couple of European Tour runs so far, and the Grand Prix as well. Only a few weeks ago he had 880s in that first round game, short format, so he's starting to get that experience, and I think it was only a matter of time really, if he can keep building up that experience, that he was going to have a deep run. And last year the big problem with him, I talk about how well he plays on the floor, but he really did struggle to get through those qualifiers to get onto the European Tour. He only got through 2 of them. This year he's qualified for 2 out of the 4, and this win that he's just had, it's got him right into that top 16 now on the Pro Tour. So going forward, he's got a good chance now of being seeded for these events, doesn't have to go through the qualifiers, and put in some magnificent performances, especially in that final session. Okay, his first couple of games, he was seeded for this weekend because a couple of players dropped out. First couple of games wasn't the best we've seen from him, but that final session, 98 average to beat Darius Labanauskas, 99 average to beat Ian White, and that deciding leg, 11 darter to win it. And then in the final as well, almost 106 average in one of your biggest games that you've ever played to beat Michael van Gerwen, and beat him quite handily as well. It wasn't a close game in the end. 8-4 did a real number on him, and want to touch on as well some of the checkouts he was putting in that final session. I think he had a 156, a 146 in the final, and lots of checkouts in that 80 to 90 range, which is, if you're polishing them off, then you're going to be tough to beat. So where does this leave him now? Well, he's up to 37th. He's got a good chance of being in that top 32 and being seeded for the World Championship at the end of the year. He's in the Grand Slam, and he's a player that if he can carry on riding this wave, I only see good things for him. And the more experience he gets on that stage, he is going to be a danger for these big events coming up.
Now that we've had a shorter Euro Tour, of course, due to the pandemic, the 4th and final event will take place in Riesa this weekend. So, from what you've seen over those 3 events, or even the other events that we've had on, like the Autumn Series, who do you think we should keep an eye on in that race for the Euro Championship?
It's going to be an interesting weekend, because you look at the order of merit at the minute to get into this European Championship. It is the top 32 over these 4 events. Usually we have 12 or 13, but it's been shrunk down for obvious reasons. So I think we're grateful that we did see it come back in the end. You've got a few players that are holding on to those spots going into this weekend that haven't qualified, the likes of Jeffrey Desvan, Kim Hybricks, Willie O'Connor, Scott Waits. They're all on £4,000. They're not going to add any money onto that ranking because they haven't qualified for this event. But you've got someone who I think could maybe push themselves into it, the player who hasn't qualified for this event yet, but if he gets through the host nation qualifier on the Thursday, Nico Kurtz, I think he's only got to qualify, and that will put him into that provisional top 32 going into the rest of the weekend. So I think he's going to be one to watch out for, and got to give a mention as well to a couple of players that went into last weekend under a lot of pressure, and we spoke about it on the show last week. But Ian White lost his first game that he played in the first 2 events. He needed a run, gets to the semi-finals. That's him virtually in the European Championship now. Glen Durrant as well had that massive high on Thursday, winning the Premier League. Had to get up early on that Friday to get over to Germany to play on the Saturday to play his first game, and even he needed to get a win to push himself up there, which he managed to do. So both of them are looking sure bets for it. But one player who's under a bit of pressure this weekend, Adrian Lewis, who hasn't got any money on that list at the moment. He didn't play in one of the events. The other event, he lost out his first game and he was a seed, so he didn't get any money. And then the last week, I think he had to pull out because of the obvious COVID reasons and the isolation because he tested positive before the World Grand Prix. So got our fingers crossed that we're going to see him in action. And fingers crossed as well, we'll see Stephen Bunting as well. He was the other player that unfortunately tested positive for the virus and had to pull out at the last minute for the World Grand Prix. So fingers crossed we're going to see both of them in action, and both of them are going to need a big run this weekend if they're going to get to the European Championship next week.
Yep, and those are the people who could qualify if things go well. But I'm going to go from the standpoint of who are we likely to see, who are we, pondering if we're thinking about betting on the Euro Championship. Gamble responsibly, be gamma aware. Think about who is having those runs. And it's interesting to have the Euro Tour the way it has been, with the division between how long it's been from the first one to the second one, and then even the second one to the third one, even though that's a lot closer, is just to see who has come through. Obviously, we've got some people that we might not have expected that have won. Obviously, with three of them, we've had Price, we've had Jose, and we've had Devin Peterson. And if you had started at the beginning of the year and told us many things across the board about darts and about society, we wouldn't have believed you. And I think we're in for a lot more surprises as 2020 goes on. But if you were to say Michael van Gerwen would have no Euro Tour titles by October, you would be shocked. If you had said Michael van Gerwen will have only made one of the finals on the Euro Tour, even if you narrowed it down to 3, you would be shocked. And he's had times where he's fallen a bit out of form and then found his footing. But again, he's struggling to find his footing. The game versus Vincent van de Voort didn't even get a 90 average, which for MVG is insane. MVG's C game usually is a 90 average. So I think there's a lot to be said for the people that are going to be there and what the potential is, because there's so much potential in everyone that's shown up there. I mean, Martin Kleermacher, so much potential there. It blows my mind to go from seeing him in the BDO just at the beginning of the year to 17th on the Euro Tour Order of Merit. It's just how do these things happen is what my brain's telling me. The huge run of form that nobody could have really predicted, but everybody's thrilled for Devin Peterson to be the second on the Euro Tour Order of Merit. And could he have the potential for it? And absolutely he could have the potential for it. And would it be something that you would love to see? How could you not love to see it? Devin just radiates having fun with the game. People that are going to be there that maybe we foresee struggling. I think Rob Cross is a bit out of form. That's weird to say as he's still 9th in the European Tour Order of Merit, but he's one of those people that runs hot and cold. Could he show up on the day and just blow everybody out of the water? Sure could. Does he look like he's going to right now? Sure does. But it's one of those things that makes it really interesting to conceptualize, because it really makes the field feel like it's open, where historically it's felt like, oh, there's maybe 2 or 3 people that might make it. You really have this moment where people are having runs of form that haven't historically had them before, or people that have had them are having less of a run of form, but you know what they're capable of. So it's one of those situations that you can't call in any match because anybody can have a run of form at any time, but it feels significantly more open. Mervyn King, 7th in the Order of Merit, ahead of Nathan Aspinall. Who could have processed that in this day and age? But you love to see it. Peter Wright, 13th. In terms of who to keep an eye out for, I think the biggest thing is just to watch it. I mean, what are you doing with your weekend anyway? Just watch it. There's going to be so much to see. There's so much potential for everybody to just show up on the day and wow us. If you stopped watching Euro Tour because you stopped wanting to see MVG take home a title every weekend, first of all, shame on you. But second of all, watch now. Because if there was ever a time to get involved on that Euro Tour train, this is it. Because I can't tell you who to watch, because I'm pretty sure it's everybody. Because I don't know who it is, and I guarantee you almost nobody had money on Jose De Sousa to win that thing last weekend, and yet he absolutely crushed it. When Mensur went to go play his match versus David Evans is in extremely good form, and I thought to myself, Mensur's a bit out of form, so I foresee David Evans steamrolling him, and then Mensur rolls up with 105 average. So who would I say to watch? It's a bit of a cheat, but I would say to watch everybody on this run, because it is going to be a very exciting weekend, no matter who gets it. At this point in time, if MVG wins it, that will be exciting, because he's not been in the form to win something. So really, that's my recommendation, is I would keep an eye on everybody, but if we want me to force me to say somebody, Martin Kleermaker is exciting to watch when you can. I want to see more of Mensur doing well, always rooting for him. He goes hot and cold as of late. I think I'm just going to go with those two, because I'm just too excited. There's just so much potential. I mean, we had on the most recent Euro Tour where the bottom half of the draw going into the quarterfinals was Jose De Sousa, Darius Labanauskas, Ian Diamond White, and Mike Hoevenhoven. What world do we live in? A beautiful world, and that's why Euro Tour forever.
Couldn't agree more. Well, let's get into our final guest on this week's show, and it is with the president of the National Darts Federation of the Philippines, Bem Noel. I'm pleased to say I'm joined by the president of the National Darts Federation of the Philippines, Bem Noel. Thank you very much for joining us. How are you doing?
I'm good, Alex. Thank you very much for the opportunity to talk about the Philippine darts.
It's our pleasure, and go back to July 2018, you were brought on the board of directors as the chairman of the organisation, but before then, where did your interest in darts come from? How did you get exposed to darts?
Oh, Alex, I started playing darts when I was like 12, 13 years old, 79. That long. I stopped playing around 84, 85, and then when I was here in my hometown in Tacloban, in 2016, I started playing darts again. That's where I was really exposed to international competition. Not me playing though, me managing now. At the same time playing, trying very hard to play still.
So how did it come about then, you getting on board as the chairman to lead the organisation over in the Philippines?
Well, I've been active. Maybe my public title, as you may call it, my being exposed to politics somehow helped. We have this small organization in southern Philippines. It's a darts organization of Tacloban. We were active in practically all tournaments nationally. And then we were invited in the PDC eliminations, the Asian level. And that's where I got to meet Jome and then eventually the PDC honchos. And then after a while, I was exposed to the NTFP family. Before the death of then President Tito Songkuya, he was already telling me that I have been there, done that for the Philippine darts. It's time that younger bloods will take over. And then I said, you are still young, you're still kicking. Just continue. You're doing a very good job from grassroots darts to big-time darts. He saw that we had potentials as we brought the first Philippine Open, which hosted around 50 foreign players 2 years in a row until this year. It was postponed because of this pandemic. Then President Tito passed away, and then the baton was passed over to me. It's a big shoe to fill, but I'll just have to do it since the game of darts has always been very close to my heart, Alex.
Just talk to me about the darts scene in the Philippines at the moment. What have been the main challenges really to get people interested, get people playing, and what would you say have been the biggest successes that you've had so far?
Even when I was little, as I am still now, I know for a fact that certain areas in the Philippines, they love to play darts. Then it was like cricket game before O1 became very, very popular. But there were a lot of us who were playing darts already. And then as I said, when I came back, I saw a big improvement in number as to the players. Now you can see even the small government units, as we call it here, the barangays, there are people and players playing, whether it's a small tournament or the big tournaments in their pocket area. They do have organized tournaments. So it's widespread here in the Philippines. It's doing very well, at least in this part of Asia, or rather in the world. Here in Asia, we have been competing very well. We have been actually top 10, for that matter, the qualifiers of Asia. You have Lourence, Ilagan, and Noel Malicdem, both of which are part of the 4 Asian qualifiers. But even before, if I remember right, we had players like the De La Cruz brothers, Vicky Castro, and then we had Freddie Dean. We had players sent over to play the qualifiers, the World Cup. Unfortunately, there was a lull. Whatever reason parties had may have been valid, but now that we're back in the world of darts, in the limelight, as they say, we're out there to prove that we are the best in the region, and we would like to somehow taste victory, for our local players.
Well, I want to come back to recent years in a moment, but just casting your mind back to 2009, and you mentioned Lourence Ilagan there, and here in the UK, the Philippines really announced themselves on the world of darts when Lourence got to the semi-finals of the World Masters. What are your memories of that run and what happened in the Philippines after that?
Unfortunately, Alex, I wasn't active then, but now that I've been back and heard of it, that would have been great. He was very close. He's in the top 4. Imagine, one win would have given him a privilege to step in the finals leg.
Talk to me a little bit about the PDC Asian Tour. We've seen it come to life in the last few years. We've been following it as well. There's been some great darts on there as well. Noel Malicdem hitting a 9-darter a couple of years ago. How important has the PDC's involvement and putting on that Asian Tour helped grow darts in the Philippines?
Alex, it's been great. Actually, before I became active again, it was said that they have always been participating because if you ask the top Asian players, they'd be worried if Filipino players would join en masse, in Asian qualifiers. Now that we're back, they know, and we are hosting qualifiers here in the Philippines. I know because I sponsored the past 2 tournaments, the past 2 qualifiers, and they saw mass participation, and they saw people who didn't have a chance to join because it's not easy for some players to travel as they don't have sponsors. They know that here in the Philippines, you know all over the world, you know of Lourence Ilagan and Noel Malicdem, but you haven't heard a lot of players who can beat them here in the Philippines, not just once, not just twice, multiple times. And they're really great players. Unfortunately, they don't have the chance to go and play in the qualifiers. I was actually there when Noel Malicdem made the perfect 9 darts in Korea. And unfortunately, I was not there when Lourence Ilagan in a championship game also had a perfect 9 darts against Noel Malicdem.
You mentioned Noel Malicdem, of course. He almost put out the eventual world champion Peter Wright at the World Championship at the end of last year. What are your memories of did you follow that game live at the time, and what was the interest like back home following those players? Because it was an unbelievable game.
Yes, I know. Unfortunately, you can see the veterans dominate when it comes to the crunch time. Noel will get there. He's a very good player. He's a very humble player. And he's a learner. So eventually he'll get there. The next time that happens, I am sure he's not going to give Peter Wright the chance again.
We'll come on to the World Cup in a moment, but just really want to get some thoughts from yourself really on how the virus has really affected the Philippines in the last 6 or 7 months. And obviously we know the Asian tour was cancelled this year, all the events not going ahead. What's it been like in the Philippines?
Well, it's really bad, because after the US and other big countries, which has a great population, Philippines is just like on top of it. On the top list of the infected people. That's why up to now, I think we have a travel ban until our affected citizenry goes down. Even Austria, I heard you cannot just get a tourist visa up until October 11. I'm pretty sure we are banned from entering Austria. That's why I was telling Jome of PDC Asia, is there any way that you can assist, help us getting a visa? I talked to Matt Porter and he said he's going to do some representations for us. I hope somehow they can give us the protocol with regard to us going there, for the players not to be quarantined if they are negative if they test negative in their swab test. I hope they don't get quarantined, because not only will it be taxing for them, it will also be psychologically tiring.
As you mentioned there, over the weekend, the Philippines was in the news of the world of darts. A couple of statements that you guys put out with regards to Noel and Laurence's.
It was my statement. It was an answer to the queries of Filipino, because in the social media, both Noel and Lourence, because I told them up to now we are still banned from entering Austria. So they accepted the fact that they will not be able to join the World Cup. So they expressed themselves in Facebook. A lot of Filipino players who want to see them, who want to cheer them on, were really very disappointed. So I had to make a statement that unfortunately, because of this pandemic, it's a fortuitous event that we cannot participate, since up to now we haven't really gotten a positive response from PDC Asia as to their protocol. We still have that ban up to today. I had to use friends from government to ask the Austrian embassy to give us a chance, as we would like to join the tournament. We'll see. I hope tomorrow we get a very positive answer so we can finally send our players again in Austria for the World Cup. As I said, it was a statement coming from me, but I had to correct it right away, as I have talked to a PDC and they were worried that we will not be joining. I assure them we are not joining, not because we don't want to go there. We may not be joining because of the situation which is happening all over the world. And I am pretty sure that you guys, if that happens, will understand.
It sounds like you're pulling out all the stops really to try and get Noel and Lourence over there to play in the tournament. We've got our fingers crossed for that. When are you hopeful of having a definitive yes or no that they will be able to travel over and play? Are you hopeful by the end of this week?
Tomorrow, Alex. I am told by their embassy that they will look at the I showed them the invitation already. I asked our office in Congress to guide us, to assist us in writing the embassy. We have this office there who can actually who communicates with them, and they have been the ones assisting us. And hopefully we get a nod from them. And if we do get a nod from them, then we will have to facilitate the fast track lane so that they can be there a few days before the tournament and get a swab. And if it's a negative swab, hopefully then the PDC will assist them with regard to the protocol.
Brilliant. Well, before we let you go, we should ask you about the future of darts in the Philippines. And I know it's a difficult time for everyone in the world at the moment, but what are your hopes for the future?
Alex, I would like to be more realistic. I hope you will have a chance to visit the Philippines, and I can tour you around the Philippines, and you will see different darters, different players, and you will see that there are so many Lourence, Ilagan, and Noel Malicdem here in the Philippines who can beat the likes of the Paul Lims, the best in Asia, and they've proven that so many times in international tournaments. Only that they will not, they didn't have the chance and the privilege to participate in the qualifiers. Now that we're a little more active than the usual, as I said, if you come here, then you will see that the future of the Philippine darts is very, very bright.
That's great to hear, and yeah, one day I promise I'll get over there and see you guys and see the great work that you're doing. But Bem, I do really appreciate your time. Thanks for having a chat with us, and as I said earlier, fingers crossed we'll see your team at the World Cup.
Alex, anytime. And thank you for this chance, so that you will know the situation of the Philippine darts.
Thanks again to Ben for joining us. We've got some listener questions to get through, but actually what I forgot to put on the spreadsheet, let's get to one of our questions of the week. Just going to throw this at you. To see replace the Philippines in the PDC World Cup, and as we're recording, we're due an answer on Wednesday. So yesterday, when you listen to this on what's going to happen to the Philippines, fingers crossed they're going to be over to get here. But if they're not able to, who would you like to see as a possible replacement? And the options we put on our poll were Portugal, Latvia, a ladies team, Raymond van Barneveld and Co Stompy, or are you going to go for someone else completely?
Well, honestly, if you put it there, I would say going with the world formatting, probably Portugal. I don't know who is number 2 in Portugal, but there has to be somebody. I'd love for there to be a ladies team, but I'd also like for there to be enough opportunities that the ladies would earn their spot in there. Like China, as we've seen before, have fielded a team with both a man and a woman in previous years. So fingers crossed that will be the way of the future, that as things become more financially viable, perhaps for the women's game, we will see those down the road. But I think if we go on the basis of countries, even though I know you guys love your weekly Dartscast fan favorite team being fielded, as it were, with Co Stompy, I would go with Portugal. I'd be interested to see what else Portugal has to offer besides somebody who looks mildly like Eugene Levy, who has counting problems but can score 105 average out of nowhere. Love it. Love to see it. Would be interested to see what other talent lies therein.
Yes, it's a popular choice at the moment on our poll on Twitter. Do vote if you haven't had a chance yet. 54% going with Portugal. The ladies team getting 26%. Barney and Co, the original winners of the event, 15%, and Latvia 5% at the moment. Let us know who you think should be in there if unfortunately the Philippines can't make it. But let's finish up with a couple of listener questions. The first one comes from our good friend High Roller Radio. He says, how much do you figure the pandemic has cost Fallon? Was off to New York, the Queen of the Palace, and now no New York and no return to the Worlds.
Obviously, in terms of financial qualifications, you can't say because these things depend on the run and everything. In terms of her form, I don't think it's really cost her that much. Obviously, as we've seen over the weekend, she's still in good form. The fact that Deta beat her on leg count is not a slight to Fallon. It is more of a testament to what Deta can achieve. Is it upsetting that she didn't get her chance to go to New York and be the representative for the ladies' game out there? It is, but are there a lot of things that are disappointing this year due to COVID? Absolutely. There's a lot of things that could have cost her, but I mean, she's had the Modus series online. She was on the World Series finals. You know, it's one of those things that form for everybody kind of comes and goes. She's not been the person who was at Ali Pali who beat the men in those games, but she's not been far off and she's not been stalemate. How much has it cost her? I foresee her returning to the Worlds in future. I foresee her beating men in tournaments in future. She's got a long time left in her career. As long as she continues to stay devoted to it, she's still one of the best women's players in the world. We're going to see Mikuru Suzuki make the Worlds again. We're going to see a lot of people. Corinne Hammond had that big run at the weekend as well with 2 semifinals, or quarterfinals and semifinals. And so I think it may have cost her opportunities this year in that there's just not as many opportunities for anybody. and obviously New York being cancelled. But I don't think it was her one chance to have those opportunities, and that if she didn't have them, she was never going to. To see people kind of celebrate that she's not returned to the Worlds, which I'm not saying High Roller Radio has or any of our listeners have, but you've seen it here and there, people kind of taking delight that she seems to be a one-hit wonder, haven't really been paying attention to who Fallon Sherrick is in her career, and really haven't paid attention to ladies' game in general. She's not going to be the last person to beat a man at the Worlds. She's not going to be the last quality ambassador for women's darts. And she's, like I said, I'm certain it's not going to be her last time at the Worlds. So this year, how much did it cost her? It cost her a trip to New York. I don't think it cost her anything more, to be honest.
Should say as well, we had the pleasure of chatting to Fallon on the show a couple of weeks ago, and go and listen back to it if you missed it. It was a really good chat we had with her. It's almost a year now since that history-making run at Alexandra Palace. We talked about that and the year so far. So yeah, go and check that out if you haven't already. Obviously, this year's not gone according to plan for a lot of people, and said on the show a few weeks ago, it was her, Barney and Wayne Warren. Those were the three off the top that have missed out the most through exhibitions and appearances and stuff like that. And Fallon, yeah, you could say maybe some of that momentum that she built from that run at Ali Pali, and then that draw that she had with the eventual Premier League champion Glen Durrant way back in February, March time. She's lost a little bit of that, but she's kept her eye with the Modus League, playing online, getting her name still out there, playing against some top quality players. The World Series finals, you mentioned, she was involved in that. And just touching on the World Series as well, we know that next year, if it does get the go-ahead and they're able to play those events, she will be involved in them. The PDC have already said that these events that have been postponed to next year, she will be in the field for those events. So she's going to get that opportunity just 12 months later, fingers crossed. With regards to the World Championship, yeah, shame for her that she's not going to be there again. I was looking, she's only 26 years old, and she's got a lot more years in this game, and she's one of the most recognisable players in darts at the moment, regardless of not having a tour card or playing in the big events week in, week out. She's made that name for herself from what she's been able to achieve, and I think she's going to be around for a very long time, and we're going to see her in these women's events if the PDC carry them on and develop them further. We're going to see her playing the Challenge Tour and Q School again next year, and fingers crossed for her, she's going to be the next ladies player to get that tour card, and we'll see her and Lisa on the tour next year.
And another question has come from Juanita McDade, which says, with the success of the PDC Ladies Series, do you think that the PDC should do more so that the ladies could not only earn money, but also ranking points for a possible tour?
I do, yeah, and there's been a lot of debate on Twitter that I've seen over the last couple of days since the success of the Women's Series. A lot of people enjoyed watching it and following the updates that people were putting out there, seeing who was going to get those top two spots, get into the World Championship. It was great to follow, and I think a lot of people would back there being at least that event on next year, putting it over a weekend and putting that Grand Slam qualifier on the Friday as well, making it a weekend of events for the ladies. But I think a lot of people would like to see the PDC expand and put more events on. And got to mention the chat that I had with Trina Gulliver a few months ago now, and she said around about 20 years ago when the BDO brought their Women's World Championship in, the only reason they did it was because the PDC offered Trina to come over and play in their World Championship, play in their events. So the ladies' game has often been overlooked for the last 20 or so years. Yes, we've seen some growth with the BDO putting on the women's events, getting it televised to big audiences on the BBC, and the PDC more recently giving these ladies opportunities to play in their big events. But going forward now, I think if we're going to see the ladies' game develop, yes, we want to see ladies continue to play Challenge Tour, Development Tour, play Q School and try and get onto that tour card. Lisa Ashton has paved the way for that. She's shown that if you have got the ability, it doesn't matter what gender you are, you can go and get that tour card and play against the world's best. But for a lot of these ladies, not up to that level at the moment to play on the tour. But I think putting these opportunities on for the ladies, putting more events on, getting them more involved in that PDC umbrella, if you like, seeing your name go under the PDC social media on the website when you've won titles, winning PDC titles, as I say, feeling more part of the PDC environment. I think we should see more events like this next year. Maybe do 4 or 5 weekends, mirror it to the Challenge Tour, Development Tour. I'm not quite sure whether they're going to go the full hog and put on their own World Championship or big events like that just yet, but I think in terms of a stepping stone and continuing the development of these players, they should put on more weekends next year.
Yeah, and I think as a starting point, obviously you have to start somewhere. And there's going to be differences in the boardroom as well as differences across fans. So do I, in my heart, want there to be a PDC women's tour? I do. Do I believe that women can play darts against the men and beat them? I also do. So if you say that, then people say, well, why do you need a separate tour? And I think the big thing is just the route to get there has not been one that's easy, and it's not easy for anybody, but there's a special set of circumstances that women players have, like the fact that they don't play for as much money. So even if you win an event, it doesn't carry you through as many future events as it does with the men's events in the PDC. And so to try to get some actual money behind players, but also to have them be seen by wider audiences, and to create a scenario in which they can be seen. I really think that while there's interest from the WDF in doing that the best platform for it would be the PDC, because the PDC have the setup structure to be able to create events like this, to be able to say, we're going to host a women's event and we're going to broadcast it and have those things even in the midst of a pandemic, to be able to arrange that and put that on. And that's something that the WDF doesn't have, not for want of trying or for them being any less official or anything. They just don't have this huge box office money that comes in from the PDC events yet. So as a stepping stone, beautiful. Would I love to see a million more in future? Yes, but I think it's a start of something. I think by testing the waters and having it there and having, streaming is perfect, because then you can measure how many people checked in on your stream. If you put it on YouTube, how many people checked in on YouTube? Even if they want to troll and say negative things, how many people put their eyes on it? Because the eyes on it is what gets you viewership, and your viewership gets you the deals to broadcast things in future. So I hope it's not only the first thing to be able to create a tour where women can earn money, but I would love it if it led to a tour where women could be seen regularly instead of having to pay for Q School and then opt in for the challenge tour. They've said they want to filter that women into the men's game, and that's fine, 100% fine. We've seen people compete at the World Championships. We've seen Makoto Suzuki almost win. We've seen Fallon win. We've seen Lisa in these events, with her tour card. It's not impossible, but it's improbable given the base that they've got to go on now. And if they can just prop up that base with a few more events, or if COVID becomes a long-term situation where you can't have big, huge events and you need more home things, Darts is perfect for at-home viewing content. And having a moment like this where you stream it like a pro tour is just perfect, because people see it. You can sell advertisements if you need to. They haven't yet, but they can. It's an option that's available to them. You can post it on YouTube. You can get advertising revenue through YouTube. And there's a lot of financial income to be gained from screening more events through as many possible challenges. Darts is unique not only with the fact that women will have an easier time than, say, other traditional sports getting their eye in and playing against the men, but also in scenarios where you can't have a stadium full of people, it can still be played quite safely and produced for people. So I think they should do more. I think it's a good start, and like I said, I've sent a few tweets at Matthew Porter begging for more, and I hope other people have as well, because if anybody is going to have the capacity to create this groundwork and to set up something like this, it's going to be the PDC. And will we support and the WDF when the time comes around and they have it? 100%. But I don't think the WDF has to be the only ones to do it. And I don't think the PDC has to be the only ones to do it. I just think there needs to be more, full stop. And hopefully that's what we're seeing.
Now, before we go, this is usually a job for my co-host Burton, but as he's not here, it's up to me this week. Anything else for this week?
I would say, first of all, thanks again for thinking of me when Burton's away. and everybody putting up with my overwhelmingly American accent still after all this time in the UK. And thanks for our listeners with their questions and participating in both the, our sponsors, Low Six events, and also our questions of the week. And, keep sending any recommendations you have for guests. Obviously, we've thought a little bit outside the box here, given the situation with the team from the Philippines. But anybody who's involved that you want to hear from, give us a thought. We've got that list of trying to get everybody who's got a tour card out of the way, but it's not just tour cards, it's anybody that's involved. So, send us your input across the usual channels wherever you can. But if you have anybody that speaks to you as a guest or somebody that you want to know more about who maybe isn't making the big runs in the tournaments, give us a shout and we'll see who we can get on.
Yeah, just echoing that, and should say over the next few weeks, next week we should have Deta Hedman on. We're going to hopefully be chatting to her this Friday, so just misses out on getting her on for this week's show, but we should have her on next week. Got a few players as well that are going to be playing in the PDC World Cup that you're going to be hearing from over the next few weeks. We'll try and bring them out next week and the week after. It depends how many players we get on. As you mentioned there, Low Six as well. Got to give a shout out to our sponsors. Really appreciate their support. Don't forget to download the Low Six app to play. 18 plus UK residents only. T&Cs apply. Please gamble responsibly. BeGambleAware.org. And shout out to the players that won our contest over the weekend during the European Tour. D Mike 30, J Dent 64, Callum 061201, MK White 5, who shared the top prize. That was a free contest that Low Six put on. Should have one this weekend during the European Tour, and we're working behind the scenes to get a good one for next week during the European Championship as well. So keep an eye out for that. Thank you very much, Hanna, for joining me. I really appreciate it. Thank you very much to our guests as well for joining us. And I suppose I better say it because Burton's not here. Until next time, hang tight.